to the United States under AGOA have dropped sharply since the global economic crisis in 2008. This is according to a report submitted by the U.S Trade Representative to the U.S Congress.
AGOA, a U.S. law signed by President George W. Bush in year 2000 to give hundreds of product lines from Africa duty-free access into the American market. It expired last year but has been renewed for another 10 years. According to the report, tabled by the U.S. Trade Representative, African exports to the U.S. increased eightfold from $8 billion in 2001 to $66 billion in 2008. The increase was mainly driven by oil exports. But since then, the U.S. has managed to dramatically reduce its dependence on foreign oil through fracking. That has seen African exports to the U.S. drop sharply to $9 billion. At the same time, African exports of products other than oil increased from $1.5 billion in 2001 to over $4 billion last year.
I think it is a good thing that African countries and African economies are not only dependent on oil, that most of these African countries, they are quite diverse in terms of their economic, their produce and their exports to the US as well. So what this basically means is that we're going to have an increase in employment creation because we've got a lot of industries that we get to focus on, and also this is going to add to those countries that have got a competitive advantage in certain sectors like the agricultural sector. They are going to export more and get more. So we have less countries having a trade deficit, and more we have a trade. We'll see more countries actually gaining a trade. In terms of trade relations, having a trade surplus, which is actually good for economic development in Africa.
The report also notes that there are many African producers who are unaware that their products qualify to enter the U.S. duty-free under AGOA. Work is now underway to try and change that.
These capacity building measures, they are likely to improve the utilization of the preferences that are being offered to African countries by America. So what we'll see these countries being able to export more, as compared to the current status, because you realize that there are a lot of challenges that African countries are facing. Some of the producers domestically, they don't know that their products that they're actually producing, they're on the tariff lines. But through these capacity building strategies, they'll be able to know, and they'll also be they'll also be helped to export their products.
The U.S. is also pushing for African countries to negotiate individual free trade agreements with it. So far, only Kenya and Mauritius have expressed an interest in doing so. Bongini Muchwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.